Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, August 28th, 2019. Time for yet another show, and Wednesday is a good one because, of course, very often I don't have to do the entire thing. And, we're just getting, settling into the new school year routine, a little awkwardly, still not have all the timing down exactly right, but everything seems to be okay now. Had the wrong, I don't know what, timing on hitting the music. They had to mess around with it in the background. You wouldn't have heard this thing, but maybe Justice would have. He must have wondered what was going on with our interlude music coming in a minute early. But I think I've got everything fixed now. And an enormous text conversation going on between my son at college and my wife, who is at the moment in Utah. So that's got to be an early morning surprise for her. He should know by now that at 9 o'clock, texting me about which classes he should or shouldn't register for is probably not a great idea, but at least she's awake to handle that. Other one is out the door on his way to high school just by the skin of his teeth. You know, we do things that way here at Kagro in the Morning World headquarters, whether you're on the show, involved with the production of the show, or not. Should be a good one today in the sense that it will be a bad one, as I wrote in this morning's Morning Post. Kicking things off, everything has gone crazy already. Plenty to cover today that was easily predictable last night. And the president is awake and only making it worse right now in preparation for hurricane season and some of the storms bearing down on Puerto Rico right now. He is tweeting insults to the government of Puerto Rico, and in particular about the mayor of San Juan, because everyone remembers he hates her guts because she tried to get him to help out with the hurricane last time. So he's getting all revved up about this, I assume preparing to nuke the thing. Daily Coast Radio is live for all of it right now. This morning, according to Bill in Portland, Maine anyway. And why do we believe him about what's going to happen on the show? I mean, he has a pretty good beat on these things, but it must be just some sort of magic. Anyway, Kagro X, that's me, David Waldman, can confirm that not only did Trump need Russian oligarch co-signers to get his loans approved, but Deutsche Bank forced him to sign the documents in Wiener Schnitzel, Greece, which why not? At this point, that couldn't even come close to being the craziest part about that one. Yes, that was the big story overnight. I think at first we thought the big story overnight was going to be the report from, is it the Washington Post that has this report? I'll have to open up Pocket and make sure I've got everything in order here. But I thought that the big story was likely to be the news, if it is news, that Trump has decided that he absolutely, positively has to, must, and will deliver on his promise of, if not finishing the wall, then at least building some of the damn wall. We keep hearing all the time about the many miles of wall that he says has been built, and Daniel Dale reminding everybody, no new wall has been built. There's been replacement of fencing with the new bollards, but there hasn't been any new wall construction at all. No new mileage on that, and there's only a year or so to go before it's full swing election season, so it didn't seem likely that he would be delivering on this promise, but I guess he woke up and realized that, or someone told him at a meeting, there's very little time, and your supporters are going to say, where's the damn wall? And I don't know why the answer wasn't, well, why don't we just lie about the construction of the wall like we've been doing all along? I thought that was the plan. I guess something panicked him, and he decided that he should try to actually construct this thing. And so the Washington Post story on it, and I'm sure we'll discuss it and maybe read it in full later on, has reports that he is, stalking about the White House, telling everybody, look, we got to get this thing done. And it doesn't matter if we're tied up in court over eminent domain claims where we have to build this wall on private land. Just take the land and let them sue us about it, and we'll win later. And besides, if you have to break the law to get this thing done, don't worry about it. I'll pardon you. Now, I think the White House position on this is, oh, well, the president was joking about that. Which, again, why not just say you were joking about building the wall and having Mexico pay for it? I mean, if I'm joking is a real and viable option, then just go with that when you fail to get these things done. Anyway, further evidence as well that President Fabric Swatches is alive and well, still designing his Barbie dream house and making trouble for the Army Corps of Engineers and everybody else who's involved in the mechanics of getting this bollard fencing put up by insisting on design details, painting it black, which apparently, adds considerably to the cost. I guess the materials aren't black to begin with, and painting it black is an extra cost, and it takes extra time to do, and it adds all sorts of extra complications to the operation. And they've actually calculated out how many miles of fencing it will cost to paint what's already put up black. Plus, of course, he wants there to be scary-looking pointy tips to the bollards in order to threaten injury to climbers. Now, I guess we should wait to read through the details of things, besides which probably Greg will take us through some of these things as well. But let's listen to 5 or 6 minutes of this beautiful upbeat music first instead. And you can never go wrong listening to the music. However, after the music, there's even better stuff. Greg Dworkin now joins us. I bet you've got stories about this and other great news as well. Good morning. How are you?
I do. We got to talk about Brexit and Boris Johnson and the attempted coup in the United Kingdom. We'll get to that.
Oh.
And we'll get to lots of polling stuff because there's a ton out today. But I don't understand. Why doesn't Trump want to paint the wall white nationalist? Why does he want to paint it black?
Yeah, I think he remembers the song, I assume. But people have been backfilling some reasons. I think he thinks it looks scary. White would work, I guess. But
white would work better because black just gets covered with bird poop,
Yeah, that's true. I wonder whether he thought black would get covered in dust and dirt and need to be washed. But I understand that I think as a backfill of a reason, they've also decided that the black paint absorbs additional heat and makes the fence hot to the touch, and therefore they think more difficult to climb. I don't know that people are flinging their naked bodies
crazy,
against
right?
it. Yes, right.
He's nuts. I mean, in an hour he's going to say we're going to scrap all that. We're going to go for stealth technology so you can't even see it.
Yeah, maybe that. Oh, that would have been an answer to not getting the damn thing built. Well,
it is built. You just don't see it.
Built it out of F-35s,
Remember,
which are black.
The Emperor's New Clothes is a Danish story.
Denmark. Everything is. We learned today from Tom Cotton, who's still insisting that it was a brilliant idea of his to buy Greenland, that the U.S. Virgin Islands used to be Danish, he says as well. So
and
Danes
to
are ahead
put
of us
a
on
twist
everything.
on an old joke, Tom Cotton is still trying to persuade Trump to have a man landing on the sun, but it's okay because he'll do it at night. And, Trump will go for it.
It's a good idea. Everyone should do it.
Yeah, but Tom Cotton's going to say, that was my idea.
right.
I'm the one that told him.
Tom Cotton will tell him that Tom Cotton was the one who told him.
This is
not
what
embarrassed.
courtiers do.
Yes.
It's just what they do. So we're going to talk a lot about the Democratic primary and the general election. But I do have to get some of the Brexit stuff in because there's like really weird stuff going on. All right, Boris Johnson winds up in the prime minister. He's not exactly elected, that is to say, not elected by the people. It's just that his party had the prime ministershipness, whatever. They had that slot there. And so when Theresa May stepped down, his own folks elected him to be the prime minister.
Yeah.
People didn't have a say in it. And Jeremy Corbyn and the opposition said, okay, fine. We know that Boris Johnson wants to have a no-exit Brexit.
Yes.
I mean, just do it.
Exit. No deal, right? No
No deal Brexit.
That's it. Right.
But
no
there's
exit
no
Brexit.
exit. There's no exit, right? I mean, what's going to happen is the whole country's going to collapse. But that's what he wants.
Right. Yeah.
And he's the prime minister, so he gets to decide what he wants. At least he gets to go decide and negotiate it with the European Union, who is looking on with consternation, reminding themselves that they're much bigger than the United Kingdom, and they're the ones with the leverage, not the other way around. But there's an October deadline. That's how it was set. And the opposition was thinking, what we should do is we should just get together, Parliament, and with some rebel Tories from Boris Johnson's own party, we should just pass a law that says that there's going to be an extension on this exit Brexit, this no-deal Brexit, and that'll sort of force Boris Johnson's hand to at least stave off disaster for a little longer while we figure what's going on. And Boris Johnson said, no. It's the United Kingdom with the leverage. What we're going to do is we're going to force the European Union to their knees. So we need to have that October 31st no-deal Brexit as the threat, the club, that is over the European Union's head to force them to negotiate with us for a better deal. That's his plan.
Why didn't he take care of that at the G7?
Well, it just couldn't be done that quickly. So that's his plan. And Parliament said, no, we're going to pass this law so that you can't just go ahead and do that. And Boris Johnson said, fine. If that's what you're going to do, I'm suspending Parliament. We're going to prorogate. I think a couple of months ago we said you got to look up that word because it doesn't necessarily happen in the United States. But you suspend Parliament with the Queen's blessing. And if there's no Parliament, they can't pass any laws.
Oh. Well, I liked it when they locked the 5 bishops in the basement in that Elizabeth movie. They should try that.
Yeah, they should try that. So we should try locking Boris Johnson in the bathroom with a magazine and see what happens. So what happened is this is all this morning. So this is a piece from CNN trying to explain it all. Opponents of a no-deal Brexit just got royally outflanked. Boris Johnson's wheeze of getting the Queen to order a 5-week suspension of Parliament means his critics have much less time than they thought to prevent the UK leaving the European Union without a deal on October 31st. Before today, their preferred option was to pass a law requiring the government to seek an extension and hold a second referendum should negotiations with the EU fail. But with Parliament due to return from its annual summer break on September 3rd, they now have 4 days. That could force them to fall back on Plan B, a vote of no confidence in the government. The trouble is, for that to succeed, they need conservative lawmakers to vote against their own party, and that's going to be a tall order because, in effect, you'd have to have the conservatives vote for Jeremy Corbyn.
I think they'll do it. No, I guess they probably
won't. They had no choice. They might do it, but the idea was let's get together with the conservative moderates, such as they are. Let's get together with the Bob Corkers of the Conservative Party, the Tories in England, and come up with some sort of law that everybody could sign on to, saying, let's just say Parliament says you have to negotiate. You can't just do a no-deal Brexit on October 31st. And it sounded like the rebels in the Tory party would go along with that, which is why Boris Johnson's forcing the issue.
I see.
So that forces them back on Plan B, a vote of no confidence in the government. In order for that to succeed, all of the opposition parties have to agree that Jeremy Corbyn maybe will be a caretaker PM and then step down because everybody hates him. But they have to agree on that. And then they have to get some conservative rebels to join them. Otherwise, they don't have the votes for it.
Okay.
In any event, a new parliamentary session will open on October 14th with the traditional state opening of Parliament and Queen's speech, which the monarch reads out a text written by Downing Street that sets out the government's legislative priorities.
She's going to get booed.
Yeah.
Can that happen?
Well, I don't know.
I don't think it's ever but why not? This is not good.
Do you lose your head if that happens, or is that just the old days? That's typically followed by several days of parliamentary debate, and while Johnson has hitherto been happy to tear up the norms of British political life, this is a tradition that will suit him well.
Yeah. What?
Then there's an EU Council summit on October 17 and 18, and if there's a new Brexit deal, he hopes to ram it through Parliament. But if negotiations with the EU fail and Johnson sets a path to no deal, things could look very different. The trouble for his opponents is that by this point, the room for maneuver would be severely limited. So Johnson seems pleased with himself, pointing out Parliament will be sitting in the run-up to Brexit and the whole affair is perfectly in order, given that his predecessor, Theresa May, had allowed the previous parliamentary session to drag on. And so that's what's going on. That was CNN's version. Nick Bowles, who is a rebel, was Tory whip and stepped down, said one big question remains after Corbyn's position. If Parliament succeeds in passing legislation that requires the Prime Minister to secure an extension to Article 50, which is how it would be done, and the government then proposes an election on 16 October, will he whip Labour to vote against an early election? Well, until this happened, unless Corbyn commits to opposing an early election, there will still be a risk of a no-deal Brexit going ahead. In other words, Corbyn had a promise not to ask for an early election in order to get the Conservative rebels to vote for this piece of legislation. But now everything is upended.
Yes.
So it's not really clear what's going on.
No, not even now it isn't. Even though we've read this thing, I don't get it. But
right. The Sun's political editor, this is 8 minutes old, is reporting some serious disquiet in government about Boris Johnson's new strategy. Is Boris's real aim to invite a no-confidence vote and force a general election on his preferred battleground, also high risk, as a majority with the Brexit party still alive, very unsure, and a pact with Nigel Farage will mean having to govern with him? Boris also needs two-thirds of MPs to agree to an election. Can't just call one himself, and they may not. It all depends on whether Corbyn agrees to whip in favor or insist on legislation to block no deal first. Some serious disquiet in government now about the strategy. One senior minister tells me, I don't think number 10 really understands that if we don't have the MPs, we don't have control. I think it's 50-50 what happens next.
wow. Well, democracy. It's
Right?
pretty dumb.
Okay. And then for you, who is a process person, and everybody else out there like me who likes process too and learns from all of this, here's a little article on prorogation, what it is, and why is Boris Johnson using it.
Okay.
This is Schoolhouse Rock for Brits. As government announces it will prorogue Parliament, we answer the key questions. What is it? It's a formal mechanism to end a session of Parliament, normally lasting only a short time until proceedings begin again with a new Queen's speech. So it happens at the end of Parliament where you say basically, okay, you're at summer school.
Oh.
You're all out for the summer. I'm done. And you have to come back on the Queen's Speech Day when the principal comes in and reopens school.
I see.
Is this normal procedure? Well, there's a number of highly irregular factors at play here. For prorogation to last more than a month is unprecedented. Since the 1980s, prorogation has typically lasted less than a week. But this 5-week suspension does include a 3-week period that would typically be recessed anyway.
All right.
Right? Can MPs vote against prorogation? Nope. Parliament's due to go on a 3-week conference recess anyway. No vote there. Proroguing Parliament is not voted on by MPs, so it can't be stopped in that way. Well, how does it work? Well, the Privy Council comes into play.
Of course.
Didn't see that coming, did you?
No.
The request to the Queen and the proposed timetable is expected to be made at a Privy Council meeting at Balmoral by a small number of senior ministers who attend the meeting, and the Queen could refuse, but she won't. And how will this affect plans to stop no deal? Well, we talked about that. Will there be legal action? SNP MP Joanna Cherry has already said there will be, and there you have it. So that's your quick summary of what's going on in England.
Yeah, the last bit
Mariel
here about whether or not I guess she would find herself in trouble about this. It does say, could the Queen refuse this request? And yes, she could, but the current...
If she does that, then Parliament could say, okay, you no longer get to decide.
Right. I mean, it's very...
these are norm-breaking, big deal things that will happen that, hasn't happened in England in a long time, but has happened before.
She's supposed to do what the elected PM pretty much says. She's supposed to stay out of the politics.
You get to be queen as long as you do everything we say. And if you don't do what we say, you won't be queen anymore.
That's quite an interesting deal. I'd take it, but okay. Yeah, so, even if she tries to say, well, I had to do the right thing, this is crazy, well, that could end the monarchy.
It could.
Which is okay with me.
It's sort of like Mitch McConnell breaking the rules in the Senate.
Yes.
How do you know he broke the rules? Well, because the majority says he did. But what if they say he didn't break the rules? Well, then he didn't break the rules.
I guess so. All right. I would take the monarchy if they wanted to offer it. I don't have any special feeling for it or for England, but it's a lot of money.
A draft choice to be named later. That's a pretty fair deal. What are you trading for it?
Colonies? I don't know. What did they do originally? This is all I know about England. We don't like it.
Right. I would give them, personally, Steve King and Tom Cotton. You can have those guys.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Make them your prime minister for all I care.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me. I think they already did.
Here's what I think
right?
of your special relationship. Yeah.
So that's England. Let's talk about the United States.
They're very nice, England.
They're
All
lovely.
right. Yes.
Pass the wassail bowl. And let's talk about the U.S. So I had a pundit roundup that I wrote, and this headline I wrote before the two new polls, the Quinnipiac poll, the Q poll, and USA Today poll came out this morning. Mm-hmm. The headline was, Joe Biden is a stronger candidate than you think, but no guarantees.
And how'd that hold up?
Pretty well.
Okay.
Part of what I was thinking is basically trying to understand Biden's appeal. Here's a piece from Peter Hamby from Vanity Fair. Are we really going to have a gaffe fest over Joe Biden? How clickbait and outrage porn are hurting readers and elevating Trump? Trump wants to drop a nuclear bomb in a hurricane. Immigrant children are dying in the U.S. custody. The Amazon rainforest is burning. With the stakes so high, why is the press still assigning so much news value to gaffes? He himself was a reporter, by the way. And a very good one. But this is 2019, which made the Biden episode so confounding. Donald Trump is president. He reportedly wants to drop a nuclear bomb in a hurricane, toying with the global economy because of a longstanding personal grudge with China, or as we pronounce it these days, Gina.
Yes.
7 immigrant children have died in U.S. custody. The Amazon rainforest is burning. Russia and China are continuing to meddle in our political process. And I will simply note, without putting too much credence into it, that Lawrence O'Donnell last night reported that the Deutsche Bank Trump tax returns show him paying very little taxes and loans being co-signed by the Russians.
Yeah.
That's the report, yet to be verified.
Yes, right.
So,
that's the big point. Big news, but yeah, we're still waiting for somebody to say that's true.
Hard to believe Mueller didn't know that, but whatever. With the stakes so high, why is the press still assigning such news values to gaffes? The severity of statements from these candidates needs to be judged in context, said Ben LaVolt, former press secretary for Barack Obama's reelection campaign. Trump says and does something sinister every week that has implications for real people's lives and has mobilized hateful elements in our society. Mm-hmm. Carl Cameron, former chief political correspondent for Fox News, who resigned from the network, said reporters had to be careful not to trivialize the race. The idea that Biden has loose lips is as old as Biden himself. The problem for the press is Trump says so much more stuff all the time, and all the ratio is just beyond description. He makes what we used to cover as gaffes look meaningless. How are we really going to cover Biden? Well, it seems as though we already are. But the funny thing is when you go ahead and you ask people, not reporters, it makes no difference. So Hamby tweeted after that piece, he tweeted a link to it and said, gaffe coverage is stupid by me.
Okay.
And David Drucker from the Washington Examiner, straight reporter, conservative leaning, but straight reporter, said, talk to Iowa Dem voters about Biden's so-called gaffes. None cared. There was concern about his age, not his gaffes. This was my favorite response. Why do you keep asking about Biden's gaffes when we have put up with 3 years of Trump's absolute nonsense?
That's a good point, certainly.
So I said, why suggest Biden is stronger than he looks? Because voters don't care about the gaffes. They do care about reestablishing norms. They prefer his health plan because they're loath to give up what they see as the stability of Obamacare. He's got issues that hurt him, including losing the electability mantle over time, but don't underestimate his appeal. Just because you don't like him, pick your reason, doesn't mean the voters feel the same way.
Well, that's always true.
Right. So to me, it's important when Biden supporters say I'm giving up on him. It's not important when people who already aren't voting for him say they're giving up on him.
Yes, that's true. Grain of salt there.
Right.
They weren't there.
So we had that. And then the USA Today poll comes out.
Uh-huh.
And what does it say? Americans dread the 2020 election and have doubts about the outcome, but Biden maintains his lead.
Okay. That's what normally counts.
If the candidate they support loses, nearly 4 in 10 say they would have little or no confidence that the election had been conducted in a fair and square way, setting up what could be a debate over the legitimacy of the next president. Those expressing doubts, 30% of Republicans and 45% of Democrats, although they identified different threats to the electoral process. Meanwhile, Biden retained a wide lead at 32%, up 2 points from the last one taken in June. This is a Suffolk poll, by the way. Warren moved up 4 points to second at 14%. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders dropped 3 points, now at third place with 12%.
Okay.
Okay. The sense of towering stakes has been stoked by Trump. If the election were held today, 41% said they would vote for an unnamed Democrat, 39% for Trump. 10% said they would vote for a third-party candidate, and another 10% were undecided. That 10% for a third-party candidate will drop. 10% were undecided will drop. So 10% undecided, well, that's the persuadable folks we were talking to you about these past couple of years. Yes, they exist. Forget about the base that's voting for Trump. There are persuadables to be won. And so far, the evidence is from other polls like Fox that say if you have to choose between a Democrat you don't like and Trump, and you don't like either one, it's 4-1 Democrat.
Oh.
It was 4-1 Biden anyway.
Oh. Well,
Biden being the generic Democrat in my mind.
Okay.
But that's what it has. So right now, Joe Biden with a big lead there. And then the Quinnipiac poll, which I think is even more interesting. I think it's a better poll than Suffolk. But the headline there, all top Democrats beat Trump as voters' economic outlet dims. Democratic primary stays stable with Biden holding the lead. If the 2020 presidential election were held today, 54% of registered voters said they would vote for Biden, 38% for Trump.
Okay. I mean, good.
Sanders, 53-39 Sanders.
Also good.
Warren, 52-40 Warren. Harris, 51-40 Harris. Buttigieg, Mayor Pete, 49-40. Looking at all the matchups, President Trump is stuck between 38 and 40%. That's exactly what the Fox poll said a couple of weeks ago.
But they were right.
These low numbers may partly be explained by a lack of support among white women, a key voting bloc that voted for Trump in the 2016 election. Today, they go for the Democrat by double digits in every scenario.
And they might not be the same people. We didn't ask whether you answered those polls last time or not. Remember that?
They're not the same people. That's part of the theme.
Yes.
Especially the independents are different. We'll get to more of that after the break.
Okay. Well, we'll save it for then unless we prorogate ourselves during the break. Queen, keep it to yourself. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We're still with Greg Dworkin. Let's see, we're done with the UK. We did the
pretty much. I mean, I never thought that the difference between pro-rogue and anti-rogue was really going to come up for discussion.
Right.
Pro-rogue is a real word. Anti-rogue I just made up. And we're the colonies. We get to make up words.
Right, that's true. And I'm undecided on rogue. I'm 10% of us are.
Rogue too. So we are back to the Quinnipiac poll.
Yes.
And they write, looking at all the matchups, President Trump is stuck between 38 and 40% of the vote.
Yes. Right.
These low numbers may partly be explained by a lack of support among white women, key voting bloc. Though it's a long 14 months until Election Day, Trump's vulnerability among this important voting group does not bode well for him. Yeah. Now, this would match some other things that we said Monday and before, that Trump is not the favorite. As G. Elliott Morris points out, if you want to talk about electability, the guy with the electability problem is Trump, not Warren, not Harris, not the Democrats. So electability is all in the eye of the beholder, but it depends upon who your opponent is. If you are more electable than your opponent, you win.
Yes, typically, unless the Electoral College intervenes.
Or the Russians cheat. Now, in hypothetical matchups between Trump and the top 5 presidential Democrats, one key number is 40, said Q poll analyst Mary Snow. It's the ceiling of support for Trump no matter the candidate. It hovers close to his job approval, which has stayed in a tight range since being elected. So don't sweat the fact that he doesn't drop. The point is he doesn't gain either. Voters say 56-38 that they disapprove of the way Donald Trump is handling his job as president compared to 54-40 a month ago. Why? The economy. For the first time since Trump was elected, more voters say that the national economy is getting worse than getting better, 37 to 31,
Weird.
and 30% staying the same. This compares to June 2019, with 23% of voters said the national economy is getting worse, and 39% said it was getting better. So he's losing people on the economy. When asked to rate the state of the nation's economy, 61% of voters say it's excellent or good, 37% not so good. And Trump's approval for his handling of the economy is split, with 46 approving, 49 disapproving. Of his handling of other issues, the president is underwater, 38-56 on foreign policy, 38-59 on immigration issues. Immigration issues is an interesting one because Hans Noel, political scientist, tweeted this: "I think this is our country, not theirs," is an incredibly significant phrase because the Trump-Pence funding letter says the president is calling on you at this critical time to remind AOC and Democrats that this is our country, not theirs.
Yes.
Right? So he's going all white nationalist, and the point is that the Q poll says, well, that's not necessarily working with the public. 38-54 approval for his handling of trade, 38-53 on guns, 32-62 on race relations. In addition, 62% of voters say that President Trump is doing more to divide the country as president, and 30% say he's doing more to unite the country, an all-time low. These numbers may help explain why only 36% of voters report they're very or somewhat satisfied with the way things are going. So overall, Trump's policies that we don't like are actually resonating with the public now. And the only thing that was keeping him even halfway decent position was the economy, and he's losing that at the moment. It doesn't have to be a recession for that to happen. It's happening now.
Wouldn't that be something for economic anxiety to undo him?
That would be interesting, but also, according to this, race relations. And, of course, everybody will hone in on economic anxiety because people are uncomfortable talking about race relations.
Right. Do you mean economic anxiety, or do you mean,
Economic
anxiety?
Among whites.
Air quotes. Right, yeah. Oh, that's true. White people and others are anxious about very different aspects of the economy, it appears.
Yeah. So it's interesting, and there's a Tom Etzel piece that's worth mentioning in regard to that. Tom Etzel writes, going back to the headline, such a long piece, I have to scroll all the way up, and it takes like 2 hours. We aren't seeing white support for Trump for what it is. A crucial part of his coalition is made up of better-off white people who didn't graduate from college.
Better-off white people who didn't. Okay.
I'm thinking of these as plumbers, steam fitters, tradespeople who didn't go to college, but nonetheless are making a pretty good living, or were.
Yeah, okay.
White.
Yes.
I mean, to me, these are the folks I grew up with in Yonkers, New York. I would even throw in ethnic. The trouble with Etzel's portrayal there is that it doesn't really carve out the white evangelicals, who were really his base. But anyway, he concludes his very long article saying the 2020 election will be fought over the current loss of certainty, the absolute lack of consensus on the issue of race. Fear, anger, and resentment are rampant. And again, it's more fear and less resentment.
Okay.
Democrats are convinced of the justness of the liberal, humanistic, Enlightenment tradition of expanding rights for racial and ethnic minorities. Republicans, less so. I think that's a pretty understatement. This may well prove to be a vase versus base election, election. But even so, the outcome may lie in the hands of the substantial proportion of the electorate that's undecided, 7% according to Pew. And if Democrats want to give themselves the best shot at getting Trump out of the White House, it's toward these voters that they must make concerted efforts at pragmatic diplomacy and persuasion and show a new level of empathy. So he's making the claim that the racist base is not who we're talking. This is very familiar. The racist base is not who we're talking about. They're untouchable. They're going to vote for Trump. But according to the Q poll, it's a relatively small base. Then you have Pew saying, well, 7% are undecided. And in the USA Today poll, it was 10%.
Right.
And Rachel Bidikofer says it's probably closer to 4% when you get down to what people are actually going to do. But I've always described it as being between 4 and 8%. So I still feel pretty comfortable with that. That group is large enough to decide the election, large enough to make a huge difference in places like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Michigan and North Carolina and Florida and Georgia and Arizona and places and Nevada and places that are relatively close battleground states. So there's no reason to write them off. And I think that you can push them away, unlike Trump voters. You can yell at Trump voters all you want to, and they're not going to change. They're not going to be more
Feel free
Trump.
then.
Feel free. But just like everything else, if you start yelling at them, the other undecideds in the room watching you be a jerk are going to say, "Oh, that's not very persuasive." And that's the real reason to be nice to people, not because you're in danger of making Trump supporters more Trump supporters. Well, I only voted for Trump because the liberals said that I was a bad person. No. It's that there truly are undecideds, and gear everything that you're doing toward them.
Could you ask them
without
to cover their
throwing
ears?
your base under the bus?
Oh, okay. I mean, it works with my kids. Cover your ears, and then
pretty much.
Then you curse out the
the
base. Why don't they just do that?
Behave yourself as if there are children in the room. It's not bad to do that if you're out in public.
Why don't we just ask the undecideds to vote and vote early and get it over with?
Well, why don't we just make them decide, right? Well, Trump is doing that for us. Okay. So back to the Q poll, the Democratic primary. We covered USA Today with Biden having a big lead, matching my headline, and now Q poll does the same. The race for the 2020 Democratic nomination for president has remained steady, with little to no movement since the last time the Q poll asked the primary question nationwide. Biden leads the pack with 32%, Warren at 19%, Sanders has 15%, Harris gets 7%. So Warren has passed Sanders for second place. Mm-hmm. And second place is still far behind first place. And yet, it's still very early, and it's not clear at all that Iowa matches the national sentiment. If you look at polling, it does. There are very few Iowa polls, and the most recent ones have Biden with about a 9-point lead, which nationally, if you look at the aggregate, that's about what he has nationally. These particular polls may be a little bit greater than that, closer to double digits. But if you talk to people on the ground, Warren has a better ground game, bigger crowds, more enthusiasm.
You want to hear it?
Enthusiasms.
Okay.
Right. National enthusiasm for Biden is just fine, as you can see in these polls. But Iowa enthusiasm tends to lean toward Warren. And some folks have basically flat out said right now it looks like a Warren versus Biden race. I think that does a disservice to the other people like Bernie and Kamala Harris, who are still very much in it because it's so far ahead, so long until February when the Iowa caucus actually takes place, and who wins in Iowa will have a big effect, a profound effect on the field. But, right now, again, these are only snapshots, not predictions. Right now, it does look like a Biden versus Warren race. And they're running to very, very different strategies.
Yeah.
Warren is about change, which the public wants. Biden is about reassurance, which the public also wants. And I think you can't see it any better than looking at healthcare. I think that Medicare for all and being all in on it is a mistake for the public. I don't think the public wants that. And you can point at all the polling you want that says it's popular. As soon as you start telling people what's in it, or that it will require change, or that you lose your own private insurance and stuff like that, it becomes significantly less popular. And people want change, but they're afraid of it. So this is a fear election. And if they're already getting bombarded with fear from all the Trump side, and if you're going to throw in fear of losing your health care because you don't really know what the new system's going to look like, that's not a political winner. And so we can argue that the merits of incrementalism versus flat out change. People want change, but they want stability at the same time. They want safe change.
That all. Yes.
I want my taxes to be lower with more services. Right. The person who seems to be able to provide that, or at least come close to it without, scaring you about the trade-offs is the one who wins. So I think, that's one of the reasons why Biden is ahead right now. Another reason is that people who, and again, this gets back to the headline I wrote before these polls came out, people underestimate how powerful it is to have a persona like Biden's, which is built on empathy. He's really good at that, especially one-on-one. And there's a lot of the other people in the field who are also really good at that, what you might call retail politics. Kamala Harris is great in person. So is Beto. So is Elizabeth Warren. But Biden's whole persona is on that, and he's been around so long that, quote, everybody already knows it, end quote, which is another reason why they're willing to overlook the gaffes.
Okay.
So if you have somebody who feels empathetic at a time that you're anxious about change, whether it's economic or otherwise, healthcare or otherwise, you're going to look to the guy who makes you feel better.
I guess that's true.
And so to me, that explains his enduring lead, despite the fact that he has gaffes that may or may not be gaffes. People who don't like him say it's indicative of everything about his personality, and people who like him say that's just Joe, and people who aren't paying attention, which is the vast majority of Americans, they look at it and say, what are you making a big deal for? What, he made a gaffe? What is he, Trump?
Yeah.
I mean, in this environment, it's not going to stick.
That.
It's going to be a very ineffective attack.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think the vast majority of people are probably just saying, oh, yeah, I know that guy. Biden.
I know that guy, pretty much. And you know what? I know that guy with positive feelings is just worth so much. You can't buy that. You know who couldn't buy that? Tom Steyer. Because the other thing that these two polls do, today is Wednesday, the last day of polling for people who need to get in to the debates in September. Both Steyer and Gabbard didn't make it. They didn't get their 2% in those two polls.
How about Howard Schultz?
Well, he's third party, so he didn't count.
Is he now?
Well, that's the whole threat. If anybody remembers him, he's not running in the primary.
Really do. Yeah, I don't know what.
He suspended his campaign, so he doesn't count.
It was supposed to be for 2 weeks or something, wasn't it? I don't know.
Well,
I mean, I don't care. Like, stay out as far as I'm concerned. But
2 decades. Howard Schultz is a non-issue. Nobody really cares.
Yeah, I just thought that was funny the way we moved so smoothly into. He never ran.
Well, I didn't ever think he was a big factor, so don't count me in on being disappointed we couldn't talk about him.
It's going to be just all over the place.
Mike Bloomberg would be a bigger factor if he decided to go third party.
Right. Yeah, I don't even know what and
so would John Kasich. If Bloomberg and Kasich ran, I think that would really hurt Democrats. But that's another story for another day. We're not to the point where we're talking about third parties. We're talking about primary and general election with the one-to-one matchup for now. And as far as the primary goes, which is really what this segment is about, Biden is in a strong position, but not an overwhelmingly strong position. He could do things that would lose support. He still has issues with younger voters. And Iowa in particular is a very liberal Democratic party, which is mostly white.
Yes, that's just Iowa's fault in general.
But, that's one of the reasons why we've always not wanted Iowa to go first. But the fact is that the people of color that make up the Democratic Party aren't going to have as strong an influence in Iowa as they will in, let's say, South Carolina.
Yes. They could move there.
Or Nevada. So the first two states are pretty
white.
white.
Comfortable, I bet.
And that's not necessarily good for Joe Biden in terms of who his support comes from.
Yeah, that's true, too. Even though he, last I checked, was himself white.
He's still, as far as I could tell. And he could make the argument that he's always been that way.
And that people know it.
Right. So
I know that white guy.
The fact that the economy is actually starting to make its way into the polls is big news. The fact that Trump seems to have a ceiling, not just theoretically, but according to what the polls say, I think is news. And again, I think that changes the narrative quite a bit because I think people really need to start focusing on the fact that Trump is in electoral trouble.
I wouldn't mind if people did do that.
Yeah, he's he's one of those people with the issues. Quinnipiac has the share of Americans saying the economy is getting worse at an all-time high for his presidency, 37%, more than double the 15% in August of 2017, a year ago.
Oh,
so that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm. True. He's probably looking into whether prorogation is a possibility here.
Another interesting polling thing, not from either of these polls, but a Gallup poll. Approval of unions is at a 50-year high in Gallup's polling. 50-year high. A huge turnaround from a low point a decade ago.
Yeah. I wonder what has prompted. I mean, they've certainly been doing a lot of work to try to turn that around. I just figured.
Plus negative partisanship. Trump is against it, so people have for it.
Oh, maybe, yeah. Right. I guess that's a possibility. I've read some interesting pieces about opinions on, like personal opinions, not opinion polling on unions of late, which I guess didn't come as a sort of surprise, but I don't know. I guess I'm pessimistic since I've seen so many people working so hard on it for so long. I assumed, well, you know how these things go when you work on something for a very long time and work very hard at it. It fails. So,
Right.
Yeah, Democrat that I am. So I guess I figured, how much headway could they be making? That's fantastic news.
Right. So let's take
Makes
some of
sense,
these
for God's
global
sake.
concerns and let's bring them local, right? All politics is local, as Tip O'Neill used to say.
Yes. I had a thought. Maybe it's because all of the journalists are beginning to unionize and they're influencers and whatnot.
That could be. It's really fun to see that on Twitter and to support that.
Yeah. All right. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
This is from Kyle Griffin, who's a
Yes.
producer at MSNBC. Republicans are funneling resources into the North Carolina 9th District as they try to stave off an embarrassing loss in a GOP-heavy seat that Trump won in 2016 by more than 11 percentage points. You may remember
Yes.
North Carolina 9. That's the one where the Republicans stole the election from Dan McCready.
Yep.
And we had all these discussions about whether or not we were going to seat the Republican, and it turned out that everybody agreed it was crooked, and so they're having a redo. McCready's still running. And this article from, where is it from? Wherever the article is from, says it also underscores concern about early vote totals, which show the GOP falling behind. Through Monday, 54% of early votes in the district have been cast by Democratic voters compared to 41% by Republicans. At the same time before the 2018 election, Republicans had a 46-42 lead over Democrats.
But that's when they had the guy cheating and driving around and picking up their ballots or changing other people's ballots into Republican ones.
Right.
Now that guy's in trouble.
So if you can't cheat it may be that you can't win. It's quite interesting, and that election is going to happen in a couple of weeks. And in fact, I think Trump is coming down for a North Carolina rally the day before the election.
That's what I heard. Yeah, he forgot about early voting. He should have been rallying that.
Yeah, he should have been out there a little bit earlier. But if it turns out that he comes down there and this guy loses anyway, that'll be interesting in terms of dynamics of how things are covered. The other thing is, of course, it's after Labor Day. And everybody knows people get more serious about politics after Labor Day, and they start paying attention a little bit more.
Right. When is that election? After Labor Day.
Whatever Trump's rally is, it's the day after that. North Carolina
Set your
09
clocks by that.
election
Just
will be Tuesday, September 10th.
Okay. So
he'll be down there the 9th for the 9th.
Okay. That's an easy way of remembering it. So Labor Day coming up, then there's about a week, then his rally, then the election.
Yep.
Good. Rally too late. I like that. Republicans are, I was surprised to find that. I thought, generally speaking, are they less prone to cast their ballots early? But I guess because it was such a Republican-heavy district, they were leading in the early voting because there's just more of them.
Well, I can't answer that, but I know somebody who can, and that's Mike Bitzer, Bowtie Politics from North Carolina.
Wow.
Political scientist who follows this, and I'm just looking for his graphs. Okay, here is 2018 and 2019. The big counties are Mecklenburg and Union, and here is his
Union
difference.
Making a comeback. Yeah. All right, let's take a look.
Or if you'd like to look this way, I'll show it. This shows it a little clearer, that the difference.
That's a chromatograph you sent me here. Okay.
The second one is a little bit clearer.
Michael Bitzer, not Blitzer, not Donner.
Not Blitzer. Bitzer, not Donner and Blitzen, right?
Yes. Donder, I found out, by the way. It's,
Donder,
yes.
yeah. Well, yeah.
Not Donner. Anyway, Donner is the party.
Yeah, Donner's
Donder
the dinner party.
Yeah, right. If they had had a dinner, they would have been in better shape.
Right.
Okay.
Thunder and lightning, Donder and Blitzen. So the registered Democrats in 2018 were falling way behind the Republicans. But in 2019, so far, this is Union County, and we need more on this is 2018 versus 2019 in Union County. And Union County is a Republican county, and the Democrats haven't surpassed it. but they have caught up quite a bit.
Yes,
So you could see that fairly clearly.
Okay.
I have to look at Mecklenburg. Mecklenburg is the bigger county, and I think it's a little easier to see. Yes, it is. So here is the Mecklenburg, and you could see that Mecklenburg was closer in 2018, but Republicans leading. And now in 2019, it's the Democrats and Independents that are leading by a considerable margin.
Okay.
And since that's the big county, that's why it matters so much.
All right. Well, those of you who can't see it will be able to see it when we include these Michael Bitzer tweets in our daily roundup. So then you'll get your chance to see it. Believe
and then
me,
finally,
it looks like
I'm going to give you the cumulative total, not just separating it by county. All right. And if you look at the cumulative total, you can see that the Democrats are surpassing the Republicans by party registration, and that's actually pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, it was the opposite before.
So you can't always tell from looking at early votes, but the interesting thing that strikes me is 2018 compared to 2019 is that the Democrats had a slight lead in 2018, followed by the Republicans, with the independents lagging behind. Mm-hmm. And in 2019, the independents are voting the same or outvoting the Republicans.
Yes.
This fits in with Rachel Bitecofer's theory that the reason that we did so well in 2018 is that we mobilized independents.
They mobilized themselves because they're independent. I think they'd like to think that, but we did.
Well, Trump mobilized them. It wasn't us.
We did it by not being Trump.
And that's continuing to happen in 2019, according to this data. If you have the independents outvoting the Republicans, and that's what happened in Colorado, then it's going to be very difficult for the Republicans to win. Because, again, the Democrats outvote the Republicans, but generally when they lose elections, it's because the independents swing with the Republicans. If they swing with the Democrats, then that makes it very difficult for Republicans to win.
Yes.
Overall. And if you have a close, if you have a, 80-20 electorate, that doesn't count. So you're never going to win Idaho and Wyoming. Sorry, John. But, in terms of getting closer and winning locally and winning specific elections, yeah, you can. And so this is an example of how that happens. Okay. The independents are coming out and they are voting at least as much as the Republicans are. And the Democrats are outpacing both of those other categories. Well, so that's why the Republicans are worried, and that's why Trump is going down there to rally, and that's why they're pouring money in.
Okay, very good. And that's why why Roger Stone, Republican strategist, is a swinger, so that he can help persuade them to swing with Republicans, except now he's in court and too busy to do this anymore. So that must be why we're winning.
Right.
Fantastic.
Anyway, that's my segment for today, and I was just going to wrap up, and now I'm looking at the clock, and I see, it's almost the end of the hour. So every time I get on here for a half hour, I talk for an hour. I must be from New York.
That's the way it goes. And don't look to me to prorogue it either, or have pierogies, because it's just too early.
Right.
Different things,
I suppose. So that's it for today. Here's another interesting one from Susan Collins. Senator Susan Collins told Politico she's sad that her support for Brett Kavanaugh could cost her votes in her upcoming election.
Goodness, I can't believe she's sad. That's terrible news.
So here's a constituent, Elad Nehorai, Nehorai. I don't know how to pronounce that. Says, I sat in Susan Collins' office as abuse victim after abuse victims shared their testimony during the Kavanaugh hearings. Collins wasn't even there. She refused to meet with them, instead having her staff stand there stiffly and listen. That was sad.
Yes.
Oh, and afterwards, when the survivors refused to leave the office until Collins would speak to them, the staff called the police and they were arrested.
Oh,
all of them were constituents of hers from Maine. That was sad.
Yeah, that's not...
It's just a reminder.
Yeah. Well,
Collins is sad because she explained why she voted for Kavanaugh, and that should have done it for you.
Yeah, right. So you heard my explanation. Yeah. Well, did you come hear ours?
No. Well, no. I had my staff come in, and then I had the police. Yeah, that's good enough, right? It's the same thing.
My people listen to your people, and then arrest your people.
Remember what we were just talking about in terms of Joe Biden and empathy?
Yes.
And how powerful that is? I'm just pointing out it works the other way, too.
Oh, my goodness. I'm deeply concerned. Troubled, concerned, disappointed was the one that ended up in the ad, the very powerful ad against her. Good. All right. Well, she's sad. I read in passing in Twitter, without looking into the depth of the reporting of the story, that Dianne Feinstein is a little sad too. She's not sure she wants Susan Collins to lose. I guess because they eat lunch together.
Right.
So I'll try and help her make up her mind.
The older senators.
Yes. All of them.
Who worked in a different time than what we have right now.
Right.
All mourn the loss of the comity that used to allow them to go out for drinks after arguing on the Senate floor.
Right.
At a time that we're not talking about creeping fascism and prorogation of Parliament and the equivalents in the United States and all that sort of stuff. So, I get where they're coming from, but you got to keep up with the times here.
Yes, I get where they're coming from.
And not the New York
the
Times.
Past. So, yes, right. Oh, they're easy to keep up with. Right. Yeah, okay. Well, I'm sorry she can't make up her mind, but of course she doesn't get to cast a vote in Maine, like the Alabama Republicans don't get to cast a vote in Minnesota either. But
right.
We'll talk about that probably in the next hour. Thank you, Greg. I know
you're welcome.
I'll
just say goodbye, but hang up during the break so it doesn't disturb your listeners.
Oh, that's fine. And, we'll give you some music to exit by in about 5 seconds. And then, all right, that'll wrap things up. Thanks for doing half the show. I appreciate it very much. It's a tough thing to do on a Wednesday, but easy when I know you're around. Thanks again. We get to see you tomorrow?
Yep.
Okay. Even though it's radio. Fantastic.
Something else will happen.
Right. Excellent. Or possibly very scary, damaging to planetary survival. Abby, you're welcome back as well. Thanks, Greg. Talk to you again. All right, as for the rest of you, we're out of here. We'll be back in 1 minute after this short prorogation. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Networks Radio. Our prorogation having been itself prorogued, we are back, and it does make me want to talk about pierogies every time that happens. Those being a Central European delicacy, perhaps I can turn back to give you just a little bit of extra information, some of which I tried to sneak in with Scott in yesterday's show summary post. I did actually follow up and do a little bit of extra reading on the Ukrainian politics situation and the story of Yulia Tymoshenko. And I thought I would share this with you. If you didn't read the summary or pick up on it in the summary, I wondered aloud because, or I admitted to not following Ukrainian politics closely enough at the time, and said, I did come away with this vague notion, like I thought I heard something like maybe Yulia Tymoshenko wasn't necessarily such a great person and that she wasn't coming from such a fantastic place. And it was pretty easy to believe quickly that newly independent Ukrainian politics might harken back to some old-style Ukrainian politics, which wasn't always, let's say, good for the Jews, as people in the Jewish community sometimes put it. And Ukraine has traditionally kind of, I think, been a hotbed of some really virulent anti-Semitism, at least back in the olden days, back in pogrom days, back in World War II, et cetera, et cetera. It was the scene of a lot of ethnic strife, not just anti-Semitism. Anyway, so a somewhat odd-looking blonde lady with like Germanic twist braiding as a preferred hairstyle gave me pause. But then I wondered, could it be the case that this was all part of Paul Manafort's stupid plans, which worked out pretty well, so I guess I don't know how stupid they are, but evil plans to meddle in and ruin Ukrainian politics. And as it turns out, that might actually be the case. I pulled up this Washington Post piece from September 14th, 2018. Ann Gearan put this thing out. Well, here's the title. Bada bing, bada boom. You know how they love the TV gangster slang. Paul Manafort's attempt to smear a jailed Ukrainian politician. And how many jailed Ukrainian politicians do you know the name of, right? Maybe you know more than I do. I can only bring Yulia Tymoshenko to mind. And here's the story. Paul Manafort's guilty plea Friday, that would have been in September of 2018, came with new evidence of a dirty tricks campaign involving a jailed Ukrainian opposition politician, the Israeli government, a U.S. official who appears to be then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and what Manafort allegedly called Obama Jews. This is not really sounding terrific for Paul Manafort, but then again, he's in jail, which is good news. But this seems like it didn't get very much attention at the time of his sentencing. I mean, granted, probably your attention was on the sentencing and what it might mean for our moron president and whether we were going to finally be rid of him. So you could be forgiven for not focusing on this aspect of the story. If you didn't. I didn't. If you did, come on the show and tell us about it. The complicated 2012 scheme amounted to an effort to smear the Ukrainian politician Yulia Tymoshenko as an anti-Semite, according to court documents filed Friday in the Manafort case. Tymoshenko was then in jail, and I forgive me if I'm still mispronouncing the name. I could have looked that up. And Hillary Clinton was among the international critics who suggested that Manafort's pro-Russian client, then Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych, had put her there. Oh my God, she was right again. Not Tymoshenko, though she may also be right, but Hillary Clinton. Tymoshenko's political party was standing in parliamentary elections in October of 2012, and Manafort bragged in documents cited by special counsel Robert Mueller, fully Robert S. Mueller III, that he could, quote, plant some stink on her. He's a really pleasant person, isn't he? Manafort pleaded guilty to 2 criminal charges and has pledged to cooperate with Mueller's probe of Russian interference in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. He didn't. He did pledge to, but it was a lie, and he didn't cooperate, and he's in worse trouble now. I'm sorry. So he agreed to cooperate with the probe. You know what the probe's about. Skipping to the next paragraph. His 2012 plan was an effort to, quote, tarnish Tymoshenko in the United States, unquote, and pressure the Obama administration to distance itself from her, according to an outline released by prosecutors Friday. The plan does not appear to have worked, although it did work to some extent on me, of all people. Now, I'm a goddamn genius, and it worked. I feel like such an idiot for having even allowed that to sink in. But I guess at the time it was happening, this would have been mid-Obama administration, maybe even early Obama administration. Ukraine was a mess. I knew nothing about it, and it was not at all difficult to believe that, sort of neo-fascist neo-fascist politics was rising. We just didn't know as much about it as we know about it now. And, it's not difficult to believe that it could rise in Ukraine. And, very Aryan-looking, Germanic-looking woman. It was kind of, easy to judge a book by its cover if you weren't going to read the book about Ukraine. So I don't want to make too many excuses, but I'm very upset with this, as you can tell. The plan, thankfully, I guess, overall does not appear to have worked, even though she went to jail. Tymoshenko's party did well in the 2012 elections. Didn't work in Ukraine. It worked here. And she is planning a presidential run next year. We've heard about that. She ran. I think she came in third. So I don't know whether that marks you as a rehabilitated politician in Ukraine or like it's coming in third. Like if you run for president here and come in third, you're like a joke. Anyway. because you would have been a third-party contestant. So where were we? Yes, in addition, the Obama administration continued to criticize Yanukovych and to call Tymoshenko's prosecution unfair. That brings us to the Gregory Craig phase of the story that we read about yesterday, that the prosecution was highly questionable. And Hillary Clinton, because she was Secretary of State and it was her job to know these things, knew what was going on in Ukraine and called it right and advised Obama as much as well. Manafort orchestrated a scheme to have, as he wrote in a contemporaneous communication, quote, Obama Jews, put pressure on the administration to disavow Tymoshenko and support Yanukovych, prosecutors wrote. So in other words, it was very definitely the idea here that Manafort would leave people like me. I'm not really an Obama Jew necessarily, but to leave people like me with the impression that she was anti-Semitic and then pressure the Obama administration to distance itself from her. Because I'm not an Obama anything in particular, I mean, I wasn't about to call Barack Obama and tell him, I need you to distance yourself from Tymoshenko. When I got the chance to speak to him, I spoke about things I knew better than what to do in Ukraine. But clearly, I guess they thought that they could get some insiders who felt like they had leverage with the Obama administration to believe that she was anti-Semitic and demand this. Manafort, quote, sought to undermine United States support for Tymoshenko by spreading stories in the United States that a senior cabinet official who had been a prominent critic of Yanukovych's treatment of Tymoshenko was supporting anti-Semitism because the official supported Tymoshenko, who in turn had formed the political alliance with the Ukraine party that espoused anti-Semitic views, the charging document said. Now, as you can see, it's getting rather complex. The senior cabinet official who had been a prominent critic of Yanukovych turns out, it seems, to be Hillary Clinton, which is an interesting connection to make as well. Paul Manafort, even at that time, of course, it's pretty obvious that you're very likely to have a Hillary Clinton presidential campaign in 2016. Even by 2012, we know this. And Manafort, looking out for his Republican friends, is already figuring, I can get a twofer here. I can get paid by the Yanukovych supporting oligarchs for doing work on his behalf in Ukraine, and I can also undermine the path to the presidency for Hillary Clinton by latching on to something and inflating it grossly and making up more stories about it. But we'll see that there's some kernel of truth lying underneath there that gets inflated later on. The idea basically being Tymoshenko, in seeking to put together a parliamentary coalition, I guess, agrees to a working alliance with another party in Ukraine that, which had, I guess, at least some of its members, if not its platform, espousing views that at least Manafort was willing to tell people were anti-Semitic. And so therefore, because this secondary party in Ukraine, or at least some members of it, had once done something anti-Semitic, Hillary Clinton hates Jews. That's how the story he wanted to play out. That official seems, as we say here, likely to have been Clinton, who was then finishing her 4-year term as Secretary of State and had become a vocal critic of what she called anti-democratic currents in Ukraine, because she's far-seeing and wise, you see. The arguments pushed by Manafort match those in an article published on the Breitbart News right-wing website attacking Clinton. Okay, so a spokesman for Clinton did not immediately respond to a request for comment on Friday. It's been a year now. Maybe they've responded. I don't know. But it's not in this article. The smear by association was based on a political alliance that Tymoshenko's party had formed with a movement known as Svoboda, or freedom. Hope I got that close to pronounced. But which had been associated somehow with anti-Semitic views. I don't know if it's even described in here. Manafort coordinated privately with a senior Israeli government official to issue a written statement publicizing this story, and then, with secret advanced knowledge of that Israeli statement, worked to disseminate this story in the United States, prosecutors claim. Manafort wrote at the time that, quote, I have someone pushing it on the New York Post. Bada bing, bada boom. He actually writes that. What a jerk. That's what the document says. Manafort's goal was, quote, to have the administration understand that, quote, the Jewish community will take this out on Obama on Election Day if he does nothing, unquote. Prosecutors wrote, quoting contemporaneous writings. So that's what he thought would happen. And all Jewish people, once again, the waspy Republicans, pretty sure they know exactly what American Democratic voting Jews are going to do. And they're all going to walk if you just tell them that so-and-so is anti-Semitic. But, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes people make their own judgments and it doesn't work out. So that was Manafort's goal anyway. The New York Post apparently didn't bite, but an article did appear on the trustworthy for them anyway. Breitbart, I added the trustworthy part. They didn't characterize it that way. The article did appear in Breitbart, outlining the ties between Timoshenko's party and Svoboda, and quoting a statement from Israel's top diplomat at the time, Avigdor Lieberman. Lieberman. No E in his Lieberman. Liberman. One prominent Jewish leader who asked to remain unnamed says that Clinton's New York Times op-ed ripping the current Ukrainian administration has, quote, created a neo-Nazi Frankenstein. And that sounds like you need at least a dramatic horror music. A neo-Nazi Frankenstein by issuing a de facto endorsement of Ms. Timoshenko and her choices, the Breitbart article said. I guess that didn't work either. The October 27, 2012 statement from the Israeli Foreign Ministry said the country was, quote, concerned about the growing extremist anti-Semitic forces in Ukraine. Sure. And cited the partnership agreement. Israel is concerned about the recently signed agreement between the, oh boy, I guess this is the Ukrainian name of Timoshenko's party. Let's see. Batkiv, B-A-T-K-I-V-S, Batkiv, S-H-C-H-Y-N-A. Batkiv Shina. Maybe. Shina. Batkiv Shina. Maybe? Batkiv Shina. I have no idea where you would put the emphasis on that, and we could look it up, but that would be a waste of our time. Anyway, Israel is concerned about the recently signed agreement between Timoshenko's party and the extremist Freedom Party, which was Svoboda. Why didn't they use that? Whose anti-Semitic attacks repeatedly aroused resentment both in Ukraine and in Israel. The statement from Lieberman's office read, the Svoboda political movement, quote, glorified, unquote, what it called, quote, the struggle against the Muscovites and Jews, unquote. The statement said. Well, that's not good. That's a pretty anti-Semitic statement, although interesting that they throw in the Muscovites in there. But clearly, it pays in Ukraine to run against Russian domination of Ukraine. I wouldn't have told them that they really need to throw the Jews in there, but that might be tradition there, which is why it was believable. The expression of such views resembles the dark pages of the history of the last century, which led humanity to the tragedy of the Second World War. Israel condemns anti-Semitic manifestations of any kind, as it should, and expresses the hope that common sense prevails. The Israeli statement came 3 days after Clinton and the European Union Foreign Affairs Minister published an op-ed in the New York Times that mentioned Timoshenko by name. We regret that the convictions of opposition leaders during trials that did not meet international standards are preventing them from standing in parliamentary elections, Clinton and the European Union's Catherine Ashton wrote. The Ukrainian government needs to address these selective prosecutions, including the case of former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko and other former senior officials. So that's the end of that particular article, and that fills in some background here. So early on, the United States government under Obama is convinced that the Timoshenko trial is unfair and doesn't meet Western standards of justice. The plan from Manafort is to smear Tymoshenko as an anti-Semite, and I guess if that didn't work, because it apparently didn't work for enough people of influence anyway, then they thought, backup plan, we need to hire a white shoe law firm in the United States to issue a report that says, no, the trial was actually just fine by Western standards, and she is totally guilty, even if she's not an anti-Semite, and maybe she is still that as well, but that wasn't necessarily the issue at trial. I don't remember what they were trying her for. And who knows, maybe in Ukraine you can try people for anti-Semitism. I have no idea. But I don't think that was the heart of the charges. And then, of course, the rest of the story was that the report was apparently not going to be sufficiently exculpatory for the Ukrainian government, and so they tried to pressure them to make it even more so, or to control the PR around the report in order to enable Yanukovych to claim that he had been exonerated by the report, which sounds a little familiar. There's more than one parallel to the Trump strategy. One claiming to be having been totally exonerated by a report that has at best mixed results for you. Two, trying to sink Hillary Clinton along the way. And three, accusing all opponents of anti-Semitism whenever possible, in the hopes that it would drive American Jews to vote for the other person, and it really just never works that way. There was another piece to this, I think, somewhere that I had put away, but where was it? Oh, yes, right. The other piece about this was I had wondered aloud yesterday about whether or not Andrea Manafort, the daughter who had graduated from law school in the middle of all this, that Paul Manafort was pressuring Gregory Craig to hire at this prestigious law firm, Skadden Arps, in the middle of this report nonsense, and it worked, and she got hired, and I was wondering, isn't she the one who had her texts leaked, wherein she was discussing with her sister what an evil bastard her father was? And I wondered, does she come to the realization that he's an evil bastard before or after his efforts on her behalf to get her hired way above her head at Skadden Arps? And I think the answer, the chronology of the texts suggested that she had an argument to make about it being a realization that she came to afterwards. So she was only too happy to accept his help in getting a job at Skadden Arps when she wasn't sure he was an evil bastard, and then later found out he was an evil bastard and changed her mind. But in fact, there's this, I guess the content of the text messages suggests that no, she probably did know and had known for a long time and didn't care because she was getting help, which suggests also that, she's no hero in any of this, of course. She didn't do anything to help expose Paul Manafort here, and she was perfectly willing to use his influence for her own benefit, evil bastard or not. And then, probably, though, had no compunction about stabbing him in the back later on if that became an opportunity. But I had referenced a HuffPost article in all this that I actually found by accident when I was looking for other texts. This is an Ashley Feinberg piece in HuffPost from October 31st, 2017, the one I mentioned yesterday. Paul Manafort's daughter texted with friends about how tight her dad was with Trump. Even the headline suggested it. But there are some just unbelievable exchanges and all this. Unbelievable in the sense that you hope you never run into anybody like this. But she's a Manafort, so it's pretty easy to believe, I guess. Some of the texts, for instance, besides the ones in which the Manafort daughters are claiming that Trump and Manafort are very tight, there's Well, where was some of these really good ones? There's a point at which one of the daughters says to the other, it's Andrea, is saying to her sister Jessica, Mom, here it is. Jessica Manafort says, guess who called Dad last night and asked him to run his convention? And Andrea says, Mom told me he was going to call Dad. She told me to get ready for Trump to be president and pick the position in the White House I want. So already scheming in March of 2016, by which point she already knows how evil a bastard her father is and is texting about it. And then says, yeah, but on the other hand, I can pick the position I want in the White House. And I guess eventually, with her dad in the clink, she came to the realization that she wasn't going to get a job in the White House, probably, or shouldn't ask for one anyway. Let's see, later on in March of the same year, 2016, even before he was announced as campaign chairman, her father's role was much larger than the public knew, Manafort Shand, that's Andrea Manafort Shand, claims. She's talking to a friend here. The friend says, I'm not paying enough attention to really form an opinion, but yeah, I think economy makes sense. Just hate what an a-hole Trump is in the process. Well, don't worry about that. Check this out. So the answer is, well, hopefully my dad will help scale that back. A vain hope, to say the least. That's part of the reason he was brought on. Can you believe that? He is refusing payment because he doesn't want to be viewed as Trump's employee, only having his expenses covered. He is involved purely because he wants to help the country. Can you believe this crap? And he thinks Trump is best so long as Trump gets trained a bit. Well, he didn't get trained. P.S. This is all top secret, so please do not repeat. But then she goes on to say, dude, he is second in command, perhaps arguably running it. The campaign manager is all for show. And then in brackets, it tells us it's Corey Lewandowski. Corey Lewandowski doesn't do, well, she says the S word here, doesn't do squat. Trump has been managing his own campaign. And let's see here, after sending a friend a CNN article hinting at Manafort's expanded role within the campaign, her friend says, is Paul getting a bigger role? Seems like it. She says, you're surprised? I told you this was the game. You think Paul does anything in moderation? And the friend says, and like, if Trump gets elected, guess who's going to be chief of staff? Now, Andrea dismisses that. Psh. He actually writes pff, like that. He would never accept. Friend, too many skeletons in his closet? Andrea actually dismisses that. No, too constrictive. Paul, this is her dad, right? Paul is a lone wolf. Has to go his own way. Do what he wants when he wants to. What is that? Do what he wants, when he wants, how he wants. He doesn't have room for other people and their needs and wants. Friend says, yeah, that's about right. He likes the challenge. That's why he's doing this. It's a game for him. Thanks a lot, jerk. He isn't being paid. Man, I bet he's loving it, says the friend. This is pure sport. He is a power-hungry egomaniac. At least she knows that. Yes, he is loving it, conclusively. Him and Trump are perfect allies for this agenda. It's so weird. He is my dad. So you think that, maybe she's putting some distance between the two of them. But there's later discussion on the same day that says, it's just weird. Like, my dad doesn't seem that smart. Like, he is smart, but I know I'm smarter than him. And by the way, she's no academic standout. Just thought I'd point that. I mean, reputable schools and all, but apparently nothing that would have recommended her, say, at the level of Skadden Arps, minus her dad. The friend says, I don't doubt that. He's a master manipulator, which seems pretty key. Andrea says, he is very manipulative. I did inherit that ability. Watch this. But I don't exploit it like he does. I know all his tactics. They aren't that brilliant, but they do work. Well, we were just talking about those tactics. Didn't work with the New York Post, but okay. Friend says, yeah, you're right, but you have a moral conscience. Well, she actually misspells it and says moral conscious. And Andrea says, like he just tells you the sky is green over and over, and eventually you are like, is it? I don't possess the ability to just lie like he does, but she does possess some other abilities. Yeah, he works his charm, she says. It's confidence, all this stuff. Well, anyway, the rest of the conversation goes on to be about, by the way, if you would like to try to exploit my dad to better your career, please let me know. That's an April 12th discussion. And she says, are you serious? Andrea says, completely. I wouldn't be exposed to exploiting him, says the friend. Andrea says, I am on a business email basis with my dad. Basically, they're already plotting, evil bastard or not, I would absolutely use him to further my career, and I'll offer it to my friends as well, because I have a moral conscience, whatever that's supposed to mean. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, with a brand new interruption to say thanks to all of you who support the show. Remember when I told you that our average monthly donation was about $7, for which you were getting 2 great hours of news and entertainment 5 days a week, and how that came out to about 70 cents an hour? That's a pretty good deal, except it's wrong. The math actually works out closer to 17 cents an hour. It is hard to beat a deal like that, and even harder to send your kids to college on. Thankfully, Patreon.com makes it easy to make that work. Patreon, Patreon.com, is the simple, secure way to make recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Just search for me or the show name on the site, and they make it easy to crowdfund the show so that the power of our numbers can keep the show going for just a few bucks a month. Once again, thanks so much for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Networks Radio. Yes, okay, so I think that'll pretty much wrap it up for look back at the Ukrainian politics section of yesterday's show. There's more to it, of course, and I got a little more reporting on it. I'm fascinated, but I just don't think I have a strong enough recollection of my inchoate thoughts about the possible anti-Semitism of Yulia Tymoshenko at the time, but it's really fascinating to find out that it was an active plan back then. Because when I literally was paying no attention to what was happening in Ukraine, that still somehow crept into my consciousness, and I find that weird and upsetting, but I guess not all that surprising. I suppose that's exactly who propaganda like that is supposed to work on, people who aren't paying close attention to what's going on, but just hear things in passing. Anyway, moving on from that subject, I've got a few others that we probably need to pay some attention to. There is, of course, as I mentioned, the Washington Post piece explaining that President Barbie Dreamhouse Fabric Swatches is spending his days obsessing about his wall again, and more importantly, telling people to go ahead and just break laws and I'll pardon you, and then P.S. that was just a joke, and seems like a pretty impeachable thing right up front all by itself, but LOL, YOLO, nothing matters. There are no laws, and it was a joke, and I guess we'll get away with it that way. But there are some really nice details in here that are worth spending some time on, and perhaps we'll return to that later on. There's also another, the other weird story that, again, I guess I'm still waiting for other confirmation on, but I guess Lawrence O'Donnell was the one who brought it to the fore yesterday, although there are more than a few people out there who say that they have been speculating as much about the co-signing of loans by Russian oligarchs for some time now. But I guess they also offer nothing by way of proof. But, it's a rumor well worth discussing, because I love circulating rumors, especially ones that are terrible for Trump. Oh, look at this. So I opened up the first news report, or the first online written report that I had seen about it. I don't know whether will this upset people at Raw Story if I say that they're not necessarily news. What I mean is that they haven't done any original reporting on this, but that's rarely their model. But by the way, I opened up, I hate to open up Raw Story pages on my computer, not because I have any problem with the people there or the way they report things. Although I guess I do have one small problem. I'm never really sure that I can take the spin that Raw Story puts on any given story and just accept it at face value. I always feel like I need to do a little additional investigation. But at any rate, mostly because of their pop-up ads and the way they structure their site that kills my computer. Anyway, today's pop-up banner, as it happens, is a Tulsi Gabbard campaign ad. I'm sure they have no choice about that popping up, and they would rather it not be there, but there you have it. Oh, and even when I go to... Look at this. This is a weird trick they've got. They put up pop-ups that have the little X mark that you can get rid of it. But when you scroll over it to get to the X mark, another pop-up ad, unrelated to that first ad, pops up over the X button. How do you like that? That's pretty incredible. That's very sophisticated and annoying. Okay. Anyway, they were the first ones to put to print the story that O'Donnell did on TV last night, which I need in order to be able to cover it on the show because I can't play that much audio stolen from Lawrence O'Donnell. So here's the deal. Deutsche Bank has Trump's taxes. That's part of what's being alleged here. And loan applications co-signed by Russian oligarchs, according to this report. MSNBC anchor Lawrence O'Donnell dropped a bombshell on Tuesday evening. The source close to Deutsche Bank says that the Trump tax returns reveal that the president pays little to no income tax in some years. That much we've seen before. And the source says that Deutsche Bank is in possession of loan documents that show Donald Trump has obtained loans with co-signers that he would not have been able to obtain otherwise. Now, again, I'm still waiting to see whether other outlets are going to verify any of this, but I guess this is all coming to the fore because of the subpoenas to Deutsche Bank asking for any documents having to do with loans made to Donald Trump and all the financial paperwork that went along with it. And I'm sure back in the day, even though they knew they were dealing with a proven liar and charlatan, they asked anyway, could you at least give us this much cover? Show us your financial paperwork so we know what we're dealing with when it comes to making a loan. And I guess that probably included his tax returns, and they forgot that they were sitting around there. And this is a great backhanded way of getting to those tax returns, even if they're not a full set of paperwork for 6 years, like Richard Neal was requesting. But since he's never going to get around to getting it, this is an interesting way of coming up with it. And imagine coming upon papers that have, co-signed loans from Russian oligarchs. Joan McCarter is here with us because I guess she couldn't stay away from this story. But
couldn't stay away from this one,
yeah.
Which, is Lawrence O'Donnell. NBC hasn't confirmed it as a news organization. It's a source to Lawrence O'Donnell, so I think we have to be really careful on that one. But we do know that Deutsche Bank does have some of his tax returns. That's one thing we can be sure of.
Yeah, you would think that would be part of, I want a loan, show us that you can pay. Well, here's the documents that would do it. Not thinking, what if I'm elected president one day and decide not to disclose my returns and someone sues my bank? So good. Mm-hmm. You didn't see that coming. And the funnier part is that they said, having seen your tax returns, and by the way, having seen tax returns that show that you don't pay very much in taxes, which ordinarily would mean you have plenty of money lying around, I still need a cosigner.
Right.
So you're not wasting it on taxes, and I guess you think that makes you smart, but still you have no money. Why is that happening? And the answer is because he's not a businessman.
We do know that Deutsche Bank was pretty much the only bank that would give Trump any money.
Yes. Right.
And we also know, don't we, that Deutsche Bank has been in the habit of laundering Russian money? We can say that.
Right. I think that's, sure, we can say that. I'm not going to stop you.
I'm trying to remember everything that we know about Deutsche Bank and Russia and Trump.
Yeah, I think they've been in trouble for
quite a bit. Right now I've got the Moscow Projects, Trump, Russia, Deutsche Bank page open.
Well, this this story helps explain some of, like, for instance, we say things offhand, like Deutsche Bank was the only bank that would loan to Trump, because that's true. It's been said a number of times, and it's pretty well documented. And we never really stopped and said, well, why are they the only bank that would, not why are no other banks doing it? We know why that. Why would they say yes? Why would they say yes when everyone else says no? And given that, one, they're in trouble or have been in trouble in the past for, I don't know whether we still have to say allegedly, helping with Russian money laundering. But the answer is they loaned to him because they weren't really loaning to him. They were getting Russian oligarchs were co-signing, allegedly, this we have to say, for these loans. Now, wouldn't that work with other banks? It might, except that other banks probably said either, I don't care if a Russian oligarch mobster who would murder me as soon as pay me back co-signs for your loan. That's not helpful to me. And why? I guess the next question is, why didn't that happen at Deutsche Bank? Why did they say, yes, a murderer? You bet. I will absolutely take his cosign. And the answer is, because we learned earlier that they were already wrapped up in Russian money laundering. Some of that money was already there. They said, I could get murdered and I'd still have the money, so maybe it's okay. I don't know. But there was only one bank that trusted Russian oligarchs. And it happened to be the only bank that would also loan to Trump. And it wasn't right. It wasn't that they trusted Trump. It was that they trusted the oligarchs, and no other bank would say, "Oh yeah, I'll give money to an oligarch." But also, you wonder why do oligarchs need money? Loans? They don't. They just need to launder their money, and they don't mind losing money. This, I guess, ties back to the sales of inflated prices of Trump properties and Trump towers, both in New York and elsewhere, to so many Russians. Why did they pay twice the market rate on them and not mind losing money if they're ruthless gangsters? And the answer is that's money laundering. There's a premium to be paid. If you can take $2 million dirty money dollars and turn it into a $1 million clean apartment that you can sell for $1 million clean dollars, that's still worth doing. But only Deutsche Bank was into it so heavily that they considered it good collateral to take the co-signature of a mobster to give Donald Trump money. It's pretty amazing, if true.
It's pretty amazing, if true. I mean, alleged, but there are things we know.
Yeah.
Like that reporting from the New York Times that told us that Trump kept talking about his relationship with Justin Kennedy.
Yeah.
The son of Anthony Kennedy on the Supreme Court, who Justin Kennedy works at Deutsche Bank.
Yeah.
And that came up in Trump's efforts to get Kennedy to retire from the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
I mean, we know that happened.
That's true.
We know lots of stuff with Russia happens at Deutsche Bank. We know it's alleged at this point. It's not unlikely.
Yeah,
but it's not a sure thing.
That's true. I mean, even I noticed
that the loans were co-signed by Russians.
Right. David K. Johnson, who writes a lot about Trump and his finances, has been out there saying, well, I have speculated for a long time that there was some Russian oligarch pressure brought to bear in these arrangements, but even I never speculated it would be as dumb as just co-signing for loans.
Co-signing a loan. That does seem rather obvious.
Yeah. Although I guess if I don't know, if you're stupid and you think you're not going to run for president, or even if you do, you're going to lose, and that's your plan. He doesn't plan ahead. He wasn't worried about what was going to happen in his election campaign, even if he knew he was going to do it. But still, I mean, that's just like picking up a big bag marked KGB money, in the middle of the street. I mean, what's wrong with that?
It's not, I certainly don't discount the possibility that Trump is dumb enough to do that, or desperate enough, or egotistical enough to think he can do it. No, I mean, he's telling all of his staff, apparently, go ahead and build that wall, steal the land if you need to, I'll pardon you.
Right.
So, Trump's respect for the law is minimal at best.
Right. You can't say, I was just joking about having you co-sign for my loans. What? You can't cover everything up with that. Well, that's rather amazing, to say the very least. I have a bit of breaking news that may be of interest to you, but may not be breaking to you. I see the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reporting that Johnny Isakson set to resign from the Senate at the end of 2019.
He has been quite ill, so that is not a huge surprise.
Okay.
But that he's leaving
Parkinson's.
Rather than...
Yeah, he won't finish... I don't know whether his term was up.
He's got another
for a while.
3 years.
Right, so that's a long stretch if you're ill.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, but so 2019, a little earlier than we thought, and of course that'll set up...
Which I presume sets up, a special election.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as a matter of fact,
probably
I guess...
in November? I don't know.
That's what it reads like here, which means...
I don't know how Georgia has its secession.
Well, we know about how they did with that. You mean their election?
Succession, rather.
Succession, yes. Secession, they have tried.
Right.
Succession, I don't know what the rules are, but this appears to say not only that they would have it in 2020, but that would give them 2 Senate elections going on in 2020 in Georgia at the same time. And, hey, how does that affect Stacey Abrams' planning there?
Yes, indeed.
And whether or not she'll be available as anybody's running mate, etc. That was a big plan, or a big rumor anyway, I guess I should say. But, okay, well, that changes the map a little bit in Georgia.
It does. Speaking of elections in the South, well, Virginia is more or less in the South. Do you count Virginia as the South?
Many people do. It was the capital of the Confederacy.
Yeah. So let's call it that.
Sure. I mean, not where
your legislature is very close to tipping to Democratic control.
Yes, that is true.
And Daily Kos Elections is involved in trying to make that happen.
Good.
So check out Daily Kos Elections for those races. We've endorsed in 6 races, 4 in the House, 2 in the Senate. Assembly and Senate, is that what they're called?
Yes.
Yes. So we can help there in this off-year election for legislature, since Virginia is one of the crazy states that goes off years.
Yes.
Does odd year
so
elections.
Wacky.
And we've also got, very quickly, a special election coming up in North Carolina.
Okay. Yes, right.
Remember the seat that was contested, and we found out that the Republicans played all sorts of illegal, dirty tricks?
Yes, on themselves.
So that there was no clear winner in 2018 in, I think it's North Carolina 8?
9.
I think it's the 8th district.
I believe, Greg was mentioning it earlier, the 9th.
6th or 8th. Anyway.
Oh, all right.
Dan McCready is running a heck of a race there. And his opponent is extremely conservative, anti-LGBTQ.
Yeah.
A bad guy. So if you got any spare bucks, that might be a good place to send him in the next week.
Okay, that is a good place to do, right? Counteract what Trump hopes is his rally effect there. I understand he's going down there the day before the election for a big rally, and I hope everybody gets drunk and doesn't go vote.
Yes, and early voting is voting has opened.
Yes.
So, if you're in North Carolina, go vote. Vote early. You can't vote often. We will not condone that, but vote early.
Right. You'll be accused of it.
And then get all your friends to do
so. Don't do it. Right.
For Dan McCready.
Can do that.
Not
That'll
the other
help.
guy.
Okay. Yeah, be prepared to be accused of having voted often, but it will be a lie, just like everything else. And
Yes.
all right, well, we'll keep an eye on that. And yes, in case I didn't get through clearly, I should not have agreed so readily. In Virginia, it is the Senate and the House of Delegates rather
House
than
of
the
Delegates.
Assembly. Yes, but
Where there are assemblies and where there are houses and where there are delegates,
Right.
well,
Right.
I don't
who
pay
knows?
enough attention.
Hell, we used to be burgesses, so back in the 17th century. But
And you're still a commonwealth, right?
That happens too. A few commonwealths out there,
Not
and
a
people get
state,
uppity about
but a
that.
commonwealth.
Yeah, I've never really understood the indignation with which people respond when people say the great state of Virginia. No, it's a commonwealth. Yeah, but I mean, they said you were great. Come on.
Isn't that good enough for you, Virginia?
Right, yeah, really, please.
I think Virginia has a big chip on its shoulder.
I guess so. It's because
Still.
we're so old, such an old dominion, as it were.
Yes.
All right. Well, yes, so Trump flirting with about 16 impeachable disasters this morning.
Yeah.
Take the land and I'll pardon you, but just kidding. By the way, what does Mike Flynn think of that? Wait a minute. What? It was a joke? I changed my plea and everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
his new lawyer is not happy about that one. I loved that Trump was all set to break the law and pardon people for breaking it so that he could implement his decoration scheme for
Yeah.
the thing. That was what struck me the most about the piece, besides the law breaking.
That
We
the
all know
wall
about
has
that.
to be black.
Yeah, and pointy in the top, and lots of great details. Apparently, there were some horizontal plates of some kind that ran across the top of the ballards that actually prevent people from climbing, but he thought they were too unsightly and has ordered them removed. And
Yes.
but that's how you prevent people from climbing over. Oh, well, I don't care about that. But that's what the wall is supposed to be for. Oh, well, never mind that. Anyway, my Barbie dream house doesn't have these. So, dumb thing happening there.
Dumb thing happening there. We've also got Attorney General Bill Barr
Yes, right. I haven't even got to
flirting
that.
with impeachment. At least I wish he were.
Yeah.
I still think
He's
that the House could
self-impeaching.
really warm up on the whole impeachment thing by getting rid of him first.
Sure. It can only help, and if he wasn't around to plead cases, I mean, he would I assume that they would put him on the defense team of any Trump impeachment trial. Can you do that? Can the Attorney General walk away from his duties and serve as defense in an impeachment trial? I'm not sure.
In this
I guess you could do whatever
administration,
you
he
want.
would do double duty.
Right. Mick Mulvaney will be there too. So
Yeah.
what's the difference?
Did you cover that one already? Barr's $30,000 holiday party at
I have
the
not.
Trump Hotel.
No. I heard about it. Haven't mentioned it. So what? He's renting the ballroom there or something for a holiday
Yeah,
party?
he's booked the hotel for his December holiday party.
I didn't know he was having it. He hasn't invited me. So $30,000 back to the boss's pocket.
Yeah.
Paid for by you, I guess, because you're paying his salary. Although he might be using old money that he stole when he was in private practice. I don't know, but money being fungible makes no difference.
Yeah. I don't think he's probably hard up.
No.
So his private 200-person party for $30,000.
Man, that's a rate.
Happening at Trump's D.C. hotel.
Yeah. No discount.
No.
Don't look for that. Can you imagine that? I'll book the hotel, boss. Give me a good rate. $30K for you, just the same as a stranger off the street.
Right. With a
Damn.
buffet and a 4-hour open bar.
Excellent. So lots of drunks, hopefully. Maybe they'll be loose-lipped. I might chip in.
Supposedly, other hotels were already booked.
Oh, yeah.
So he didn't have a choice. He had to go with Trump's hotel.
I'm sure it was his last choice.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that is news.
Emoluments? What emoluments?
Yeah. right up there with the G7 thing, which we covered yesterday. But yeah, I don't know. That's just looks like it'll just go ahead, even though even all his claims about the logistics of Doral being a good place for it are apparently untrue as well. Not to mention the fact that they're vermin infested. But
Yes.
okay.
They could boycott.
Yes, I suppose they could. They could make a
They
G6.
are unlikely to, because that's not the kind of thing heads of state generally want to do.
Yeah.
But they could.
They could.
Particularly if he invites Putin.
Yeah, that's going to
Which he
upset a lot of
says he
people.
will do.
Yes,
Wow.
I figured
He
he
says
would.
he might do.
Okay. I don't see what would stop him. Except
No,
possibly
nothing.
a boycott. I don't know. Yeah,
Unless by then and resigns, or, that stray chicken bone gets him.
Right. Yeah, you got to be careful with that. He thinks all chicken is boneless, probably. It's a good way to get him if you're into that sort of thing.
If you're into that sort of thing. Which we're not.
Yeah, absolutely. We reject it outright. All right, let's see. Well, that's an interesting story floating out there. I also, just for fun, feel like I have to mention that Jerry Falwell has another young man on his payroll problem, and not the one we found out about who was the pool boy, but a different guy, personal
Not
trainer.
the pool boy, a personal trainer.
Yes, so if you are keeping track, as I saw a great tweet about it yesterday, saying the 20-something personal trainer that Jerry Falwell Jr. set up with a $2 million land deal is a different young man than the 20-something pool boy he lent $2 million for a youth hostel, if you're keeping score. So thanks to Angus Johnston for pointing that out. He loves the youth. He's not a minister.
He loves the youth. He's ministering to the youth with his millions of dollars,
Right.
and we don't want to know what else.
$2 million at a time. He's
But,
saving the youth of America.
is all of this coming from the good folks who God-loving folks who are sending him money?
The money is, yes. He's taking the money. He's apparently diverting from Liberty University. And that, again, money
Well, I'm
being
okay
fungible.
with that,
Yeah.
frankly.
Although money being fungible, that means he's stealing Pell Grant money as well.
Yeah,
So,
you're right on that one.
that
Because
kinda
they
sucks.
do get the federal funds for students to be indoctrinated there.
Yep. Which is, also sort of a First Amendment problem. But okay. Yeah, I'm sure the Supreme Court will take care of it. Oh, wait. No, they won't. So, okay, that's fun news. Not necessarily something that I hope they're not making you do that one, although you might find it fun.
No.
Okay.
That has Hunter all over it.
Yes, I think so.
Although I believe Hunter is re-roofing a shed, so I'm not sure that we're going to see him for the next few days. I hope that he's careful being on that roof.
Yeah. How big is this shed?
I don't know.
Yeah.
He's on a mini farm, though.
Yes.
So
Okay, so it could be a sizable shed, like
Yes.
like a barn even.
it could be.
All right. Well, I hope that gets done well and quickly and safely, and you can come back and tell us about who Jerry Falwell is hanging out with.
The next, maybe his tennis pro will be next.
Yeah, that's good. And let's see. I've seen a lot of movies where the pizza delivery guy gets in on the action. But Ted Cruz sent me that one. Anyway, yeah. So we live in interesting times. That's what they say. And I don't know. Anything else we can sneak in here before we go? We're
Well,
limited on
the
time
intelligence community is extremely concerned that the next attack on our election systems is going to be ransomware,
today.
where Russian hackers take over registration databases. So, and Mitch McConnell still isn't letting any elections protection bills through. So there you go.
Wow. Well,
Off
okay.
down Mitch.
Yeah.
Still at it.
I guess so. Things getting worse, and I hope that people are keeping up that pressure because it did seem to be bothering him quite a bit.
It was bothering him, and we need to keep up that pressure.
All right.
And Yeah, on guns, too.
Oh, yes, of course. NRA seems to be losing its grip, although they won't admit to it, certainly, but that's their game plan. So we'll keep an eye on that, and I see there are some studies out that say that people who distance themselves from the NRA tend to do better in their elections, as a matter of fact.
As a matter of fact, yeah.
So, even if you're just interested in surviving, it might be something you consider doing in the upcoming election and just upset the NRA that much more. And besides which, you can burn Russian money. Who cares, right? They're involved in everything. Okay, although you might need that money to buy back your election sites from the ransomware later on. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I'll have to look that one up. That sounds well worth discussing. Thanks again for stopping by. I know they've got you busy over there, but I appreciate just a few minutes every once in a while, every Wednesday. Thanks again.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Thanks again, Joan, for stopping by. I know sometimes they keep her busy over there, and she can't make it here in enough time to discuss all the things we'd like to do. Maybe I should give her a second day on the show. I don't hold her back. I let her come on whenever she wants. Thanks again. Do stay tuned now for Justice Putnam to bring you up to date on his program following us next.